Good afternoon. Look at all these smiling faces. This is wonderful today. Welcome. We're happy you're here. My name is Susan Ryan. I'm a member of the Science, Medicine, and Tech Curriculum Committee. I'm coordinating today's session alongside Linda Fulton. Where's Linda? There she is. Our team's happy to bring you today's session. Please take out your cell phone and turn it off or silence it. Thank you. Also, welcome to the crowd joining us on Zoom in the HASP virtual classroom. Special thanks to our course technician, Gloria Goodwin, for supporting our hybrid modality. Thank you. If you have any questions or comments to pose at the appropriate times, we kindly ask you to wait for the microphone. We're going to have one on each side so all participants can hear you. We look forward to welcoming you to our monthly program titled Music Unites Us, hosted next Tuesday, December 5th, at 9:30 in the Jack Miller Center for the Arts. This program is a collaboration with the Holland Symphony Orchestra. Wow. And will feature a live performance of traditional African music. Coffee, cookies, and conversation begin at 9 a.m. And now to our presenter. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Mary McKSchmidt. She's a published author, photographer, newspaper columnist, and former sports editor. At age 53, she gave up her position as a president with Baxter International to pursue her passion, building the political will necessary to clean up and protect the Great Lakes. Yeah. She appears frequently as a public speaker throughout West Michigan. I believe she's presented here at HASP before. Her latest book, co-authored with her mother, Jane McKinney, is titled Miracle Within Small Things, A Mother and Daughter's Journey Through Loss and Aging. Others include Uncharted Waters, Romance, Adventure, and Advocacy on the Great Lakes, and Tiny Treasures, Discoveries Made Along the Lake Michigan Coast. She posts monthly at marymcschmidt.com. Without further ado, here's Mary. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Mary McKSchmidt, and it's my maiden name is McKinney. My last name is Schmidt. And if you go Mary McKinney Schmidt, it doesn't fit on a book. It doesn't fit on a byline, and it's a mouthful. So for my pen name, I decided to smush the two together and become Mary McKSchmidt. So it is a real honor to be here today to share with you the presentation, A Bench, a Tree, and a Flower, Nature's Effects on Health and Aging, featuring my mother, Jane McKinney. It is great to be back at HASP. I was last here in 2019, and I was speaking about Lake Michigan and the importance of cleaning up and protecting them for ourselves and for future generations. Today is also about nature and also about our health. I want to thank Susan and Linda for inviting me to be at HASP, back at HASP. And thank you to Ian McNeil, who helped me with all this technology. I think one of the challenges as you get a little older, and if you don't have kids and you don't have grandkids, is keeping up with the technology. So thank you, Ian. Thanks to my husband, Ruben, who's sitting in the back row, who's just always there to support me. And then thank you to the Kalamazoo Pedal Pushers Garden Club, who asked me a year ago to tell this story, and who shared with me their own story about gathering flowers and arranging flowers with seniors in a memory care facility in Kalamazoo. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Our story today, my mother and my story, is also a story about joy. And I hope that it inspires you to join us in finding ways to make nature more accessible to seniors, both inside the home and out. For nature has the power to soothe, to heal, to create miracles within all of us. So thank you for joining us. Thank you online. This is kind of new for me. So thank you for joining me. I thought I would start off with a short video featuring singer-songwriter and Muskegon native Ruth Bloomquist. Has anybody heard of her? Ah, okay. Accompanied by her husband, Max, in a video titled "This Place We Call Home." The music is accompanied by photographs I have taken as I've hiked, sailed, and bicycled up the coast of Lake Michigan. The video is titled "This Place We Call Home." And before I start it, I need help from people in the back on the volume. Just make sure the sound is loud enough. Okay, go like this if it needs to go higher, because if you go like this, that's not so good. But if it needs to go lower, just like this, or okay. So without further ado, "This Place We Call Home."
Well, it snowed last night in my hometown, and all the schools have been shut down. The snowplows prowl the streets all by themselves. I remember times that happened to me, and how glad I was to be set free. I wish that I could feel that way right now. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe it's something in the air. Maybe the leaves in the autumn that keep me coming back here. I'm a Michigan girl, raised in the shade of the white pine, walk the trails of the porcupine, proud to call this home mine. Well, I heard they closed the bridge last week, 'cause the wind was high where the water's deep. Cars backed up for miles on both sides. I remember when we rode Big Mac, afraid we'd fall between the cracks. I can't wait to take that northern ride again. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe it's something in the air. Maybe the leaves in the autumn that keep me coming back here. I'm a Michigan girl, raised in the shade of the white pine, walk the trails of the porcupine, proud to call this home mine. When the autumn leaves start coming down, dancing red and gold and oak tree brown, the kiss of summer still upon the air, I will somehow find my way back home to the golden dunes and the big lake foam, the rhythm of my heartbeat and my soul. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe it's something in the back here. I'm a Michigan girl, raised in the shade of the white pine, walked the trails of the porcupine, proud to call this home mine. I'm a Michigan girl, raised in the shade of the white pine, walked the trails of the porcupine, proud to call this home mine. I'm a Michigan girl, a Michigan girl, a Michigan girl.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm curious, how many of you were born in Michigan? So neither mother nor I, this is my mother, neither of us were born in Michigan. We've lived all over the country, have been fortunate enough to travel to different spots in the world. But the natural beauty of this state never ceases to amaze, inspire, and even heal. We are giving this talk all over Michigan with the hope that we can build awareness as to the importance of making nature and nature in this state accessible to more people, seniors, to people inside the home and out. There aren't easy answers. I'm just going to tell you that on the front end, but it certainly is time to begin the conversation. So before I do that, in front of you, you have a 3x5 card, and online you guys don't have the cards, but if maybe you'll take a minute and put your first name or your initial on the card and think about how old were you when you first entered into a relationship with flowers, a flower, or maybe it wasn't a flower, maybe it was a tree, but the first time you really noticed a flower, just think about it. And if you can remember what flower or what tree, write that down. And then why you remember. Okay, about done? All right, how many of you were under the age of 10? Yeah, the majority, under the age of 10. Okay, how about 10 to 20? Yeah, 20 to 50? Over 50? Yeah, thank you. Okay, and I'm just curious, anybody write down a rose? Oh, look at all these roses. Okay, anybody write down a dandelion? Yeah, a couple of dandelions. Okay, so I've been giving this talk. This is the 10th time I've been giving this talk, and I'm gathering this information. I'll tell you about that later. But it's amazing. And how many people remember, because it had something to do with family? Yeah, telling, very telling. So I never thought about flowers, and I certainly never thought about wildflowers until the year 2008. I was 55 at the time. I was too busy, I think, like many women, trying to balance my life as a wife, daughter, sister, friend, corporate executive. At the time, I was a president within Baxter International, and my calendar was crammed with priorities. And so I ignored the voice whispering to me in the early light of dawn when I jogged, urging me to slow down, to replenish, to re-examine my priorities. And then one day, I decided to listen, to walk away from a 30-year career, to recreate my life. The only certainty I had was the overwhelming need to live near Lake Michigan. When I closed my eyes to see my future, I could hear the waves lapping against the shore. I could feel my feet sink into the sand at water's edge and stretched up to the dunes overhead. I could smell the freshness of pine trees. Now, at the time, Ruben and I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and our friends and neighbors thought we were crazy. They said, nobody moves north for the second half of their lives, right? But we were avid sailors, had sailed 3 of the 5 Great Lakes, had traveled extensively in our jobs, and were fortunate to be able to live anywhere we wanted. And so we chose to move to the place of our dreams. Life's transitions, I have read, are like trees. In the autumn months, the leaves fall to the ground, and no matter how much you want to put them back on the branches, they stay on the earth's floor. You must go through that painful, difficult, dark self-examination, the winter months before spring can arrive. Now, I'm having a little trouble here with my notes. Let me back up here, sorry. There's no way that I wanted to return to Baxter. I knew the leaves. I knew I was meant to do something else. But what? I really struggled after I left. A friend said to me, well, Mary, what does your heart want? What does my heart want? I'd never thought to ask my heart, but the next morning when I was jogging, I asked my heart, what do you want? And the answer was immediate and shocking. Go camping. Now, so I just have to ask, how many of you all are campers? Okay, a lot. Tent campers? Okay, all right. Well, I had not camped since youth, so gear was non-existent, but I decided to scrape together what I could find and set off alone to discover the dunes and myself. I set off in April because April in Tennessee is spring. Well, yeah, of course, you all know, I know now. April in Michigan is Arctic. So, of course, the campsites were empty. And so were the branches on the bushes and trees. Now, okay, so true confessions here. I had a dome tent. You know how hard it is to pitch a dome tent? It took me, this is my first night in the Indiana dunes, and it took me 3.5 hours to pitch this tent. And so I was so proud of it, I took a picture. And I never noticed so people found out about this crazy woman in her mid-50s who hiked up the coast of Michigan by herself. And it wasn't until I shared this photograph that somebody raised their hand and said, hey, Mary, did you not notice there aren't any leaves on any branches or any of the trees or the bushes? Well, no, I didn't. But I'll tell you something. I was never alone. Always with me, peeking their head through the drab remnants of winter, were wildflowers. So how could I not greet them by name? I began photographing them on my hikes, looking through books in the evening so that I could know their name. And what, of course, I learned right away is you have to photograph the blossom, but also the stem, and the leaves. You have to photograph the whole flower. So I was often crawling along the earth's floor to get all the photographs of the wildflowers. The flowers, in turn, seemed to whisper the music of my heart. I began writing prose poems about the wildflowers, each written in exactly 100 words. I think in hindsight that self-imposed 100-word mandate was my way of bridging a 30-year analytical career with this new heartfelt voice that had been unleashed by nature's tiny treasures. I thought I would read one to you, inspired by the trilliums on South Manitou Island. Have any of you been to South Manitou? Okay, well, South Manitou is the last home of the largest cedar trees. It's also a mecca for wildflowers because it's an island and there are no deer. And so the wildflowers are spectacular. Anyway, that spring I hiked from the Indiana Dunes up to Sleeping Bear. And so I thought I would read you one of the little 100-word prose poems titled Nature's Encore. Nature's Encore. It would take 3 of me, arms outstretched, to hug the girth of the cedar marking the entrance to Giant's Valley. In the shadows, troops of floppy white trilliums gather, dancing wildly, celebrating spring. Hiking quickly, I barely notice. Shyly peeking her head from beneath a wide green umbrella, the bell-shaped face of the nodding trillium stops me. What is your hurry? Embarrassed, I kneel to photograph the graceful bodies performing to the music of the southwesterly winds. As if in appreciation, the rare face of a red trillium peers around a down giant, smiling for the camera. Nature's Encore. I have found every time I pause and notice nature, it showers me with an encore. So it was my mother who actually first introduced me to poetry, gifting me A Child's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson. How many of you had that book or have that book? Yeah, well, my mother gifted it to me when I stood probably no taller than a kitchen table. Actually, it wasn't really a gift. It was a bribe to try to get me to quit sucking my thumb. I will tell you the bribe did not work, but the poems and the illustrations created the fabric of dreams. Dreams I placed on hold for 30 years while I climbed the corporate ladder. Inspired by the time I spent hiking the coastline of Lake Michigan, sailing its waters, by everything I learned about the lake's ecosystem, I replaced my briefcase with a camera and a notepad to help build the political will to clean up and protect Lake Michigan and all the Great Lakes. The journey led me back to poetry, to a language that teaches me how to treat myself, how to treat others, how to treat the planet. It's a language that brought me back to my mother. Mother, Jane McKinney, moved here from Tucson in 2014, 2 years after my dad, and then 6 weeks later, their beloved dog died. She's 97 years old. She is the author of 10 books, including the one that we co-authored that was released this spring, titled Miracle Within Small Things, A Mother and Daughter's Journey Through Loss and Aging. Every morning at 8 a.m., I sit at Mother's feet in the recliner for a ritual we call chair chat. Both of us are on journeys to live with peace in our minds and joy in our hearts. As you might suspect, she's a heck of a lot further along that journey than I am. But what we've learned as we've shared our stories and our poems and our thoughts is the importance of nature on that journey. So I'm going to introduce you to my mother, Jane McKinney, reading one of my absolute favorite poems of hers, titled Joy in My Heart.
Joy in my heart. When my spirit is low and my heart is heavy, I need only look out my window, and suddenly my spirit is lifted and joy fills my heart. The wanderer on the fence boasts multiple bright red blossoms. Close to my window, the hydrangea bush is covered with blooms of cream-colored fluff. Above both fence and hydrangea bush, the berry bird tree displays numerous tiny red berries. To accompany all this, the birds in the trees chitter-chat their happiness.
Joy in my heart. An increasing body of research shows that regular contact with nature can improve short-term memory loss, reduce inflammation, recharge immune systems, diminish a sense of isolation, and actually lower the risk of early death. And you know what? Studies show it doesn't take that much time. One study showed just 2 hours a week. 2 hours a week could make a difference. When I saw the effects that COVID social isolation was having on my mother, the difficult physical and mental changes that happen with age, the deep sorrow that still lingered from losing her husband and her dog, and then a couple of years later, her twin, I decided to introduce the excitement of outdoor adventures into our daily routine. Walking arm in arm through the city and county parks of Holland and Saugatuck, we exchanged, we laughed, and hold on a second, I'm having a little trouble with this. I'm a Mac user, and so this is not a Mac, and so it's a little bit difficult for me. Now I've got it all confused. Okay, I'm back. All right. Anyway, we found delight in our outdoor adventures. But it was one flowering tree in one park and one bench that showed me how nature can heal the spirit and how important it is to make nature easily accessible to all seniors in all communities. This poem tells the story.
Miracle within small things. It is how we begin every morning. She in the recliner, me sliding down the bed to the floor at her feet for our chairside chat. But this morning, there is a heightened excitement in her voice and a mind as alert as I've seen in many months. It is not the snow-white blossoms outside her window, the sight of the male mallard creating circles on the pond, the animated chatter of the robins, sparrows, and red-winged blackbirds, the yellow flowers of the mock strawberries dancing across the green carpet, bordering the beleaguered remnants of the cattails. Contributors, certainly, But this surprising youthful exuberance is the result of a decorative tree in a city park with a bench that will soon be placed nearby. On the bench, a plaque celebrating a poem, her poem, and the lives of a pair of twins intertwined. Had I known the effect this simple request would have on my mother, I would have cared more about their decision and possibly ruined everything. As it was, I let go and am watching a miracle unfold, just like the pink buds on the small magnolia tree we will visit this afternoon.
The Jane Tree Corner, as we call it, is our favorite adventure destination. When I first contacted Matt Helmus, the Windmill Island development manager, and asked if I might fund a bench near the Jane Tree, I was concerned that the day would come when Mother would be able to walk out to visit the Jane Tree, but would need a place to rest before she could walk back to the parking lot. There are days now when that is the case. The plaque honors Mother's relationship with her twin and is a reminder that when her twin came from Albuquerque to celebrate their 90th birthday, the blades of the windmill actually turned. The only time my mother has ever seen that happen. Truly a magical moment. We walk to the bench now several times a month, and it's a never-ending invitation to be in a conversation with my mother and my friend. According to the 2020 census, 1 in 6 of us are over the age of 65. 1 in 6. Of course, that's not a big surprise because 10,000 baby boomers were born a year in 2020. But just by comparison, in 1920, the proportion of people over 65 was less than 1 in 20. By 2030, all the baby boomers will be over the age of 65. And by 2034, more Americans will be over 65 than children. According to a report issued by the National Institute on Aging and the National Institutes of Health, chronic diseases such as dementia, Alzheimer's, cancer, cardiovascular disease, arthritis, and diabetes are the most likely causes of death. I suspect many of you, like me, have been touched by these diseases. They often require significant resources of family and the government for long-term care, but worse, they gnaw at the mental and emotional health of the senior as well as family members. But nature has the power to actually minimize the suffering, even to heal. That's what the research said, right? Well, I actually saw this firsthand last September when my mother contracted COVID, a very severe case of COVID. And I'd like to share with you a piece I wrote titled Turning Point. Red, raw, and raging, a pain in her throat so severe even a sip of water brings tears to eyes unaccustomed to tears. A cough, dry and rasping at first, travels deep within her lungs. Uncontrollable as she tries to breathe night after day after night. Fever, fatigue, headache, words skimmed in newspapers without feeling until now. I sit at the foot of Mother's recliner, masked, cheek on folded arms, and pray as I look out her window at the hydrangea we have named Beauty. Its blossoms, peekaboo, slash, miss in between, miss hidden, miss proud, better late. Such fun we have had every morning, greeting the bush and nearby berrybird tree, the hanging basket containing Miss Scarlet, and on the fence, the dangling wanderer. There is no fun now, just fear. Death, I know, is inevitable, but please, not from this virus. I close my eyes, exhausted, resigned. An eerie, unfamiliar silence rouses me. I decided to put my mind somewhere else, she whispers. I have been watching two blossoms on little scarlet unfold in the sun. I am better now. You know what? Not all seniors have a retired daughter living 7 miles away, right? Able to make nature accessible, nor does every daughter or son have a parent or grandparent healthy enough to walk the sidewalks and paths of our public parks. And while mother lives in an apartment with windows opening to wetlands, filled with beauty and lively entertainment, not everyone is so fortunate. So can we make access easier? When Mother and I began our outdoor adventures, Mother could walk unassisted for a long mile on any type of path. Over the last 9 years, she's transitioned from walking independently to arm in arm, to a cane, to a walker. Uneven surfaces and cracks matter. So does the slope of the path. Grass, sand, or wood chip trails are no longer a possibility. Asphalt or concrete is essential. Fear of falling or being knocked over by a skateboarder or a cyclist haunt us both. It boils down to paths, benches, trees, and safety. These days, Mother needs more frequent pauses, comfortable benches with full back support, arms to help rise off the bench, benches that are at the same height from ground to seat, benches shaded by trees that protect eyes increasingly sensitive to light, and skin that's paper-thin skin that's susceptible to cancer, that open the door to sensory stimulation created by leaves that flutter and birds that chatter and squirrels that dart about. Sorry. Research points to the importance of placing benches every 10 yards for a senior-friendly park, every 10 yards. Now I'm going to tell you, I have never counted the steps between benches, but I will tell you that fewer steps between benches has become increasingly important with each passing year. Ruben and Wyatt, if they're shaded, even better. Ruben and I were up north this summer, and we were in a community where there were lots of benches, all in the sun, all empty. We kept walking and we came to a little shaded area where the picnic tables were. There was a group of seniors who had brought their own cloth seats and were sitting in the shade. They were still able to get in and out of a cloth seat. Trees matter. Often shaded benches define our adventures, creating lasting memories, even when so many other memories fade. Mother writes about one such memory in her poem, An Unhappy Squirrel.
An unhappy squirrel. After our walk along the path beside Lake Makatawa, Mary and I decided to rest on a bench under the trees beside the water. We barely got ourselves situated when a squirrel in the tree beside us began to talk to us in a calm, peaceful way at first. But the longer we sat there, the fiercer the squirrel's tone became. We even felt an acorn or two come from the squirrel's direction. There was no missing the squirrel's message. It didn't want us there. Finally, the squirrel came racing down the tree trunk and stood directly in front of us. It made a short, ferocious speech, then scampered away. It did not return.
But this happened like several years ago, and Mother still talks about this squirrel. In statistical terms, Mother is an N of 1. However, I don't think her needs are unique. As the senior population mushrooms, it's to our collective advantage to figure out how to get their input in prioritizing their needs, find ways to create a more nature-friendly environment inside the home or outside the home for those who live independently, but inside too. As I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, I first gave this talk at the Kalamazoo Pedal Pushers Garden Club last October. Imagine my surprise when they told me that for the 20 years prior to COVID, they once a month would gather their flowers and greens, combine them with a local grocer, and go to a memory care facility to sit around the table and arrange flower arrangements for the residents' rooms. They started it back up again this year and invited me to join them so that I could see for myself the joy experienced by everyone around the table. I talked to the staff, and they told me that there were residents who were typically non-communicative, non-emotional, who, when the garden club came and arranged flowers, would actually talk, would actually smile, would actually laugh. With their permission, I changed the title of my talk to A Bench, a Tree, and a Flower, so that I could share their stories too, their story too, with the hope that other organizations can also find ways to bring nature to those who are homebound. For some, it's a shaded bench. For others, a vase of flowers. Now, when Mother and I decided to co-author this book, we were actually looking for a crack in the isolating wall of COVID, something we might do together. We had no idea we would be starting a conversation with so many people about how we might help each other through the difficult process of aging. Like a poem, the book is taking an unexpected turn as it creates a life of its own. This poem I wrote is an example. I wrote it after receiving an email for a woman I do not know. It's titled, "I just want to see the night sky." I just want to see the night sky. Although it is raining, I open the door and step into the chilly air of April to feel the closeness of a sky heavy with spring's moisture. Oblivious to the rain, I am lost in a downpour of emotions, my face turned upward by an email from a woman writing about her mother, who now, confined to a wheelchair, sees only the stark white of a ceiling as she repeats her wish on every call to a daughter living so many miles away. I just want to see the night sky. While research shows that nature can have a positive effect on one's health, for Mother and me, there was so much more. It brought us together on our respective journeys to live with peace and joy. And you know what? Such journeys do not, when one turns 65. If anything, they become more urgent.
Poets at play, 7 miles apart, phones in hands, a mother in the flatlands edging the city, daughter in the forest of the dunes, swapping similes to describe evening skies, like the blush of a magnolia, wings of a fluttering monarch, eggs in the nest of a robin, petals of a long spur violet, spray of assorted marigolds, face of Annabelle's blossom, gray of the morning fog, They debate verbs to describe clouds, hovering, retreating, billowing, swallowing, streaking, whispering, pausing, as they have done to describe a winter sunset, so different from their vantage points, yet so much the same.
So I mentioned this is the 10th time I've given this talk, hoping to raise awareness as to the importance of things like a shaded bench that can make such a difference in seniors' lives. Several months ago, as part of that initiative, I decided to ask readers who follow me to submit about what things they experienced on a bench. I was absolutely blown away by the responses, and I'm posting them on my website, Facebook, and email posts. Benches create an invitation, sometimes for quiet introspection, sometimes to share an experience with a loved one, a friend, a stranger, sometimes to experience the hilarious. So if you happen to have a bench story, please email it to me with a photo of the bench. It doesn't have to be elaborate. If you can't think of a story, sit down on a bench and see what happens. You could, as one reader found, see a rabbit floating down the river in the bow of a boat. Create a memory with the child or a grandchild that will last long after you're gone. Share a bench with a dog and see what happens. There are thousands of possibilities. Shaded benches benefit us all, but when you're looking for them, you're going to see that they are few and far between. As I mentioned earlier, Mother and I have just published Miracle Within Small Things, Mother and Daughter's Journey Through Loss and Aging. Proceeds from the sale of the book and stipends from talks like this and donations will purchase shaded benches for seniors in Michigan communities. But once again, the journey to make nature more accessible to seniors took an unexpected turn. A couple of weeks ago, Ruben and I were walking down one of Mother and my favorite paths, the Hines Walkway. Mother and I actually call it Cottonwood Corner. But when we walked there, the trees were gone. I shared the sad discovery with Mother the next day at Share Chat, reminding her that a couple of them were diseased. She pulled out a poem she had written about Cottonwood Corner, titled Peace and Tranquility.
Peace and tranquility. We call it Cottonwood Corner. Mary and I claim a bench there, under the trees, besides Lake McKSchmidt. We can view the beautiful lake and enjoy the sense of peace and tranquility that the lake provides. Our corner is made up of 7 immense cottonwood trees growing very close together in a row close beside the lake. Our bench is the only bench. We are surprised that no one else is around. Now I'd have to say to you that since this poem was written, the beautiful trees have had to be cut down. They were diseased and the city cut them. It's such a wonderful, wonderful feeling that it gives you that we hope that it's soon returned.
Cottonwood Corner was one of the few places Mother and I could sit alongside Lake McKSchmidt in the shade and watch the parade of boats, birds, and people. Now, thanks to stipends and donations from West Michigan Garden Clubs, the Saugatuck Women's Clubs, and others who have heard or read our story, we have money to fund a shade tree for the bench at Cottonwood Corner. If Andy Kenyon of the Holland Parks and Recreation Department agrees, I hope the process will map out how I take this vision and make it reality. And if possible, provide a tree for the bench while Mother is still alive. Before I open it up for questions, I'd like to ask you to drop your cards in the basket I'm going to pass during Q&A. As I'm collecting information on the importance of nature, what influences us at what age, with an eye toward the population that will be the largest and most resource intensive by 2050. After questions, I'm going to ask Susan to help me conduct a drawing for a gift. And y'all don't let me forget, okay? Because I tend to forget these things. So if you'd like to receive my posts, put your full name and email on the back of the card. For those of you who are watching, you can go to marymcschmidt.com and just fill out a contact form there. Several times a month, usually on Mondays, I post sometimes prose, sometimes poetry, always photographs of the miraculous moments I see behind the lens of a camera. And now, of course, bench stories and stories of other organizations' efforts to make nature accessible to seniors. So if you are involved in something like that, please let me know. If you don't want to write the story, that's all right. I'll interview you and write the story. We have to share information on how to make this happen. So I will tell you that that this does get discouraging at times and definitely overwhelming. But then I remember 42 fourth graders from Quincy Elementary School that I met in 2007. The teachers, Kathy Nemeth and Donna Atman, had asked me to come and speak to their fourth grade classes about Lake Michigan. And of course I said yes, right? Because I always say yes. I say yes about anything I'm passionate about, whether it's Lake Michigan or wildflowers or now benches, shaded benches. And then I thought, I haven't been in a fourth grade classroom since I was in fourth grade. What on earth am I going to be talking about, right? So I did what I always do when I'm troubled, and I walked the beach. And when I walk the beach, I always pick up trash. And I'm walking along the beach, I know, with a trash bag. And then, you know what? I knew exactly what I was going to talk to these fourth graders about. So with the permission of these remarkable, extraordinary teachers, I dumped my bag of trash on the classroom floor. And what do you think is the predominant thing always that we find when we pick up trash? Balloons and balloon ribbons. It's like lava flowing out of the trash bag. So the kids were like going crazy. They're like, how does this happen, right? And well, people release balloons without thinking. It's for one brief moment, it's a celebration, it's beautiful, it's fun. They don't think about the balloons ending up on our coast, literally trashing our beaches, running afoul with our birds, no pun intended, with our birds, with our fish. And so the kids decided, well, you know what? We never thought about it. And we bet most people don't think about it. So we decided to create a multimedia campaign to raise awareness that if you release your balloons, they cause harm. So I said, well, you know what? Every campaign has to have a slogan. Their slogan could not have been more perfect. Don't let it fly or the Great Lakes will cry. Don't let it fly or the Great Lakes will cry. So they decided to canvass the neighborhood. And as they were canvassing their neighborhoods, they learned that the 2 Zealand high schools had ordered 450 white balloons each to release into the skies for high school graduation, because it was tradition, right? Well, these kids, they raised money to go to Saugatuck State Park and collect evidence of their own. And of course, I'm telling you, it still happened. I walked 2 weeks ago. Always there are balloons and balloon ribbons. But these kids, not only did they find all these balloons and balloon ribbons, they found the skeleton of a fish with a ribbon going right through it. Now, who knows what happened first? I don't know. But they took that picture and they put it in the corner of the classroom with all the balloon ribbons underneath. And then they invited the high school principals in so that they could plead their case. And again, these remarkable teachers said, you can't just say, no, you can't do this. You have to offer alternatives. And so they came up with all kinds of alternatives: release butterflies, blow bubbles, throw beach balls up in the air. Well, I was actually writing a column for the Holland Sentinel at the time. And so I interviewed the principals, and one of them said, you know what? This is tradition. We're not canceling this order. And then as soon as they walked into that classroom, they both knew the order was going to be canceled. And you know what? Those kids graduated in balloon-free ceremonies 8 years later because the school board decided to pass a resolution that nothing would ever be released into the skies at any school function. So when I get discouraged, I think of the 4th graders, and so inspired, I continue this journey to find ways to make nature more accessible to seniors, to include shaded benches. And I hope you'll join me. And while it's still a vision at this point, I'd like to leave you with one thought given to me by a friend a couple of years ago. Faith is a bird that feels dawn breaking and sings while it is still dark. Faith is a bird that feels dawn breaking and sings while it is still dark. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being patient with this technology challenges. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions. I'm going to pass this basket around. And for those of you who are online, if you want to send questions via the chat, that would be great. So questions. Yeah, right over here. Now you have to wait for a microphone. Yeah, wait for the mic. Thank you. That's so the folks online can hear.
Yeah, it occurred to me as you were talking, I wonder if there's been any thought or movement towards the whole notion of shaded benches for seniors being a information sheet or publication that could go out there to senior centers and so on. And here are safe, comfortable places that you can go.
So you know what? A great suggestions. A couple of things that I'm working on. One is, it goes back to, my mother is an N of 1. So I talked to Dr. Jill Versteeg of Evergreen Commons, and I said, would you be willing to work with me to create criteria of what is shaded, what is a comfortable bench? And so I'm in discussion with Dr. Jill about that. I am in discussion with a number of organizations across the country about how do I set up a foundation of sort, a fund, so that money would be available for communities interested in making shaded benches more accessible in their community. And I think that your idea of getting some kind of publication, get the word out via newsletters to senior centers or others, I think is a great one. And I would love help on that, or suggestions on that. And, you know, we can talk offline about that. Please, let's do that. Because I think this is something, you know, so I'm a daughter who, if you'd asked me 9 years ago, I would be talking about benches. I would have said, you're out of your mind, right? But I'm the caregiver for someone I love and care deeply about. And you begin to notice things. And you begin to notice that in our community, there are not a lot of shaded benches. There just aren't. And so we can do better. And the question is, how do we go about this? So I'm early on, it's a vision. Yeah. So please, other suggestions. Yeah. Other questions, comments. Yeah.
How can we get that video to share with our friends?
Well, so HASP, well, two things. This place we call home video, that one that I did at the very beginning.
Right.
Okay, so if you go to MaryMcKSchmidt.com, it's right there. Now, it's a YouTube video, and the YouTube selected the photo, so it's a photo of the apple. That wouldn't have been my preferred one, but that's what YouTube picked up. And actually, if you go on my website, I have a number of videos because I interviewed people about water and about our state. And I interviewed Ruth. So that wonderful song that you heard, Michigan Girl, I got that as a gift from someone who heard me speak in Petoskey. And out of the blue, it just showed up in my in basket. And she said, I don't know if you know this, but you're a Michigan girl. So then I decided I got to find out who wrote this. So, I mean, I've got to find out who this person is. And so I tracked her down and interviewed her. And so I have, this is the short one without the interview, but then she talks about how Michigan Girl came to be. And then she lives in Muskegon, which as boaters is one of our favorite places as a boating destination. They are doing remarkable things to turn that community from a Rust Belt community into what I would call a blue community, a destination if you're on vacation. And so she started talking about Muskegon, and as I started to leave, she said, well, Mary, would you like to hear a song? And of course I'm like, yeah, I would love that. And so I put my video on, and she and her husband sang this fabulous song called Bicycle Bob, that's about taking the bicycle trip around Muskegon Lake. And so I have a little video there. I have a number of videos. If you go on my website under videos, you'll see a number of videos with artists as well as scientists, as well as others who are working to try to protect this great place we call home. So
What one would it be called?
This place we call home is the short one. And then with each video, there is a description. And so the one that is, I think the one with Ruth's interview is this place we call home, parentheses long, because it's longer. And if you have any trouble, just email me. Just email me. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
A number of years ago, we never thought that putting life jackets out by the beach would do any good. People would steal them, but now they're there, and people contribute those there. And so what if somebody takes a life jacket and it saves their life? What if we did the same thing with benches? Put umbrellas there that had a certain logo on them or something like that, that always stayed with the bench. So rather than trying to build plant trees and build more shaded benches, how about just some big umbrellas that people that needed them would have them right there?
Yeah, great idea. I think one of the, and this is why I'm so interested in talking with Andy from the Holland Parks and Recreation Department, because most of the spaces are public parks, although not necessarily. Somebody suggested to me, you know what? Go walk around and look at nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and you're not going to see a lot of benches out there. But most of the easily accessible are our parks, our city and county parks. And I spoke to a garden club in Three Rivers a couple of months ago, and they said they actually funded a bench for a park. And they said, you're not going to believe how difficult it is. And so, but I'm refusing to be discouraged by that. And so, because if those kids can talk those high school principals into not releasing balloons, anything's possible. Yeah, I think the key is understanding the process. And so I'm hopeful that I can work with Holland to put a tree, start with a tree where they took a tree down, and then talk about how do we, whether it's put umbrellas or put trees in, or a ramada of some kind, something to provide shade. I think the thing that I even see with myself, I think I've had 9 skin cancer surgeries, probably related to sailing, but is, sun is the potential, to be deadly. We've got to protect ourselves. So, other questions? Yes, so this is a statue. So this is actually in Ireland, in County Sligo, the home of Yeats, and who is a poet. And it's in Roscommon, and it's a picture of a woman waiting for her loved ones to come home from sea. And I love it. I'm Irish, and I love it. Other questions? Yeah, coming in from.
Marie says Evergreen Commons has a wonderful monthly newsletter called Fresh Air. Perhaps you can send an article for our members to read and become aware of your mission.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, suggestions like that are, and if you can't think of them now, just email me. You guys have been great. Oh yeah. So yes, the drawing. So see how easy it is to forget? Okay, mix them up.
Well, SNA.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. You guys have been a great audience, and I appreciate you showing up. My goodness. So enjoy this beautiful day, and sure.
Since I already have this book,
There
Mary,
you go.
and you've already signed it for me, I think we should draw a second drawing so someone else can have the joy of this book.
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. And you know what? So he asked, what's your name again? Bill asked about this book. And I can't promote books, but I am going to tell you, Reader's World is selling this book, and they are giving a percentage of the profits back to a bench and a tree. So, please go see Reader's World.
One more drawing.
One more drawing.
Wally Foo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you
We
very
enjoyed
much. Have
having
a
you.
great
Yes.
day. Oh.